They are losing their minds not because the bond ended, but because of how it ended. A connection that once felt unbreakable didn't collapse in chaos. It dissolved in silence. And silence is the one ending they cannot analyze, debate, or reverse. What unsettles them most is not that you left. It's that nothing dramatic followed. No accusations, no public unraveling, no emotional wreckage for them to point at and say, "See? It mattered. You detached so cleanly. It feels unreal in hindsight." They remember how intense the bond once was, how deeply you showed up, how thoroughly you were woven into their everyday lives. And now that absence feels unnatural, like a limb missing without pain to explain it. They expected grief to look loud. Instead, it looks like distance. It looks like composure. It looks like someone who reached the end of their emotional endurance without announcing it. They revisit old moments, trying to locate the fracture. They replay laughter, memories, promises. They search desperately for the exact second where warmth turned into withdrawal. What they never find is a single moment, only a pattern they ignored. They thought the depth of the bond guaranteed permanence. They believed history itself would protect them from consequences. They never imagined that love could expire quietly once it was repeatedly disrespected. They are haunted by how normal your life seems now, how intact your days look, how easily your world adjusted to their absence. That normalcy feels like betrayal to them, like proof that the bond mattered less to you than it did to them. But the truth is harsher. The bond mattered so much that it taught you what you refused to tolerate again. They wait for signs of longing, for cracks of nostalgia, for moments where you slip back into a familiar softness. What drives them mad is how consistently those moments never arrive. They still feel the emotional cord. You don't. They still live inside the echo of what was. You live inside what is. They believe the bond gave them permanent emotional access to you. They never realized access is not owned, it is granted, and it can be revoked without permission. Your detachment is not dramatic. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't perform indifference. It simply exists as fact, and facts are terrifying when people were depending on fantasy. They cannot tell if you are angry, healed, numb, or just done. The uncertainty eats at them. When someone detaches without blame, there is no villain to fight, only loss to face. They would rather you hate them. Hate still connects. Hate still proves emotional relevance. Your detachment proves something far worse, that they no longer reach you at all. They tell themselves you will come back to the bond eventually, that habits return, that history has gravity. They don't understand that boundaries have gravity too. They remember the version of you that stayed, explained, waited, forgave. They don't recognize the version of you that simply leaves quietly and never circles back. They feel erased from a chapter they thought defined them. They don't understand how someone who once loved deeply can now withdraw completely. What they fail to accept is that deep love is exactly what taught you how to detach when it became unsafe. Your silence does not invite dialogue. Your distance does not request interpretation. It just closes the emotional door without a speech. They are driven mad by the lack of leverage. They cannot provoke jealousy. They cannot trigger arguments. They cannot manipulate regret. The emotional hooks they once relied on find nothing to catch. They try to remind you of everything you shared. They don't realize that memory is not a contract. It is a lesson. They cannot comprehend how bonded hearts become unreachable bodies. They don't understand that detachment is not forgetting. It is refusing to bleed where the wound keeps reopening. They look for themselves inside you and panic when they can't find their reflection anymore. They feel small standing next to your quiet composure, not because you speak louder, but because you no longer explain. They thought damage would create dependency. It created escape. They believed the depth of the bond would override the cost of their behavior. It only clarified it. They are tormented by the way your detachment does not seek revenge. Revenge would mean you still care how they feel. Your indifference confirms the opposite. They wonder how long you were preparing to leave emotionally before you did physically. They replay every moment now with suspicion. They are driven mad by the idea that your detachment did not start when the bond ended, but when the bond began to hurt. They fear they were replaceable in a story they believed they owned. They want to be missed loudly. You miss privately or not at all. They want proof that they mattered enough to fracture you. You never gave them that satisfaction. They want an emotional reaction they can interpret as power. They received peace instead. And nothing makes people more unstable than watching someone they once had completely become unreachable without hostility. The bond they still romanticize is now the reason your boundaries exist. Your detachment is not cold because you lacked feeling. It is cold because the feeling was exhausted. And that is why it drives them mad. Because they are haunted not by what you did to them, but by what you quietly refuse to keep doing to yourself. They lie awake at night replaying versions of you that no longer exist, trying to stitch old warmth onto a present that refuses to thaw. They reach for memories the way people reach for ghosts out of habit, not hope. They don't miss the bond the way you experienced it. They miss the version of the bond where your presence made their life easier, softer, safer. They miss the benefits, not the responsibility. They try to convince themselves that your detachment is temporary, that silence is just a phase. They cling to the idea of your return because accepting your permanence would mean accepting their loss. They scroll through past conversations like sacred texts, trying to decode where they went wrong, as if the answer isn't stitched clearly into every boundary you were forced to build. They imagine what they would say if you ever spoke again. Full speeches, full confessions, full apologies polished with hindsight. What unravels them is knowing those words no longer have an audience. They wonder how it's possible that you once needed them and now don't even acknowledge their emotional gravity. That shift bends their sense of reality. They feel rejected on a level deeper than abandonment because abandonment still implies attachment. What you gave them was disconnection. They tell themselves you're pretending, that your strength is a performance. They need that lie to survive because the truth that you are genuinely at peace without them is unbearable. They look for signs of regret in your life. They search your growth for evidence that leaving them cost you something. What they keep finding instead is stability. They hoped your world would shrink after the bond collapsed. Watching it expand without them fractures their pride in quiet, merciless ways. They want you to still be shaped by what you shared. They don't realize the bond shaped you into someone who no longer needs conditions to choose themselves. They want to believe your detachment is punishment, because punishment still centers them. They cannot accept that your detachment is freedom. They dread the possibility that you didn't just move on from them, but move beyond the version of yourself that ever accepted that bond at all. They feel replaced without being replaced, displaced without another name to blame, outgrown without a rival to fight. They keep waiting for the emotional earthquake everyone promises comes after deep connection ends. What drives them mad is realizing you already survived it privately. They thought the bond made them irreplaceable. What they are learning now is that nothing is irreplaceable when it becomes unsafe. They believe the depth of your connection guaranteed your return. They didn't know depth can also teach someone exactly how to disappear. And now comes the part they will never fully recover from: the understanding that your detachment is not built on anger, punishment, or regret. It is built on decision. You didn't drift away. You chose distance. You chose peace. You chose the version of yourself that no longer needs to be held hostage by memory. They are going mad because they are stuck in what was, while you live fully inside what is. They romanticize the bond because it comforts them. You remember the cost because it freed you. They are haunted by your absence. You are protected by it. And that is the final blow to their sanity. You didn't detach to hurt them. You detached to save yourself. You didn't sever the bond out of cruelty. You severed it out of clarity. You didn't leave to be remembered. You left to be whole. And the most devastating truth they will ever face is this: the bond they are still grieving is the exact reason you will never return. And that is the end of their madness and the beginning of your unshakable peace. They thought they knew you. They thought every layer was mapped, every reaction predictable, every breaking point memorized. What they were not prepared for was the version of you that no longer performs for their understanding. This version doesn't announce growth. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't demand acknowledgement. It simply exists, and that quiet confidence unsettles them more than confrontation ever did. They keep trying to reconcile the old you with the present you, like two images that refuse to overlap. The kindness they once exploited now stands behind boundaries they can't cross. They expected evolution to keep your softness. What they got instead was precision. They were ready for your anger. They were ready for your sorrow. They were even ready for your revenge. They were not ready for your self-command. You don't prove yourself anymore. And that change alone dismantles the hierarchy they thought they stood on. They still talk as if their influence defines you. What ruins their sleep is realizing your power no longer references them at all. They look for cracks that used to exist. They find armor instead. They expect emotional availability. They meet emotional sovereignty. They thought confidence would make you loud. It made you unbothered. They thought strength would make you aggressive. It made you unreachable. They are unsettled by how calm you are with your own authority. You don't ask permission to take up space in your own life anymore. They feel the shift in rooms before they understand it. Conversations pause. Eyes adjust. The energy recalibrates around you without your consent or request. They used to feel taller around you. Now they feel exposed. They remember when they could shake you with words. Now they measure their speech, unsure which version of you they are speaking to and afraid of provoking the wrong one. This version of you doesn't defend. It observes. It doesn't chase. It chooses. It doesn't collapse. It calculates. They are disturbed by how little you need from them now. Dependency once comforted them. Independence disorients them. They thought they were the standard you measured yourself against. What bends their pride is learning they were only a phase you outgrew. They don't know how to compete with a person who isn't competing at all. Your presence no longer seeks approval, and approval was the last leverage they had. They try to humble you with memories of who you used to be. They don't realize those memories are the exact reason this version was born. They feel irrelevant standing next to your certainty, not because you diminish them, but because you no longer adjust yourself to accommodate their insecurity. They look for hesitation. They find resolve. They look for doubt. They find alignment. They look for the old openings. They find closed systems. They weren't ready for a you who doesn't romanticize struggle anymore. They weren't ready for a you who doesn't confuse intensity with truth. They weren't ready for a you who moves without needing applause. They still live inside the version of you they could manipulate. That world no longer exists. They expected your growth to remain familiar. It didn't. They expected your confidence to be loud enough to mock. It's too silent to touch. They expected your power to need explanation. It doesn't. They feel disarmed by the way you no longer over-explain your decisions. You don't justify departures. You don't narrate peace. They thought your softness made you safe. They didn't consider what happens when softness becomes selective. They fear this version because it can't be guilted back into old patterns. They fear this version because it walks away without announcing exits. They fear this version because it doesn't seek emotional refunds. They fear this version because it remembers everything and still moves forward without bitterness. They try to provoke reactions to confirm you're still reachable. You remain uninterested in being confirmed. They tell themselves you're pretending. They need that belief to survive the truth that you are realer than ever. They don't know how to interact with someone who is no longer emotionally negotiable. They feel destabilized by your steadiness. Your calm interrupts their chaos. They thought your evolution would keep them included. What destabilizes them is realizing growth doesn't offer honorary seats. They weren't ready for a you that no longer shrinks to preserve comfort in others. They weren't ready for a you that chooses ease over endurance. They weren't ready for a you that learned self-respect without losing compassion, but also without giving access. They wanted you powerful but still approachable on their terms. You became powerful on your own. They wanted you healed, but still available to old wounds. You healed in a direction that didn't point back. They weren't ready for a you that doesn't seek closure, they seek forward motion. They weren't ready for a you that doesn't ask, "Is this okay?" They weren't ready for a you that no longer waits to be chosen. This version of you doesn't announce arrival. It simply rearranges the room. And that's why it messes with their head. Because everything they used to rely on to predict you is gone. Because their old power only worked on the old you. Because your silence now carries authority. Because your calm now contains decision. Because your absence now has permanence. They weren't ready for this version because this version no longer needs their permission to exist. They weren't ready for this version because this version doesn't look back. They weren't ready for this version because this version ended their influence without confrontation. They weren't ready for how little they matter to this version. They weren't ready for the kind of power that doesn't threaten. It simply moves on. And that is why this version of you lives rent-free in their mind. Not because you attacked, not because you destroyed, but because you evolved so completely that their reality can't keep up with your direction anymore. And that is the most unsettling kind of dominance there is. They try to pretend they're unfazed, but the change in you unsettles them in ways they can't disguise. Your confidence no longer seeks mirrors in their approval, and that robs them of the role they once played in your reflection. They keep waiting for the old triggers to work, the guilt, the nostalgia, the confusion, but none of it lands. It's like pressing buttons on a machine that has already been powered down. They sense that your peace isn't fragile anymore. It doesn't wobble when tested. It doesn't bend to pressure. It simply holds. And that kind of stability unnerves people who relied on your little cracks. They thought your growth would still orbit them. What bends their pride is realizing your life has found a center that doesn't include their gravity. They replay memories, trying to anchor you back to who you were. They don't understand that memory no longer has permission to trespass in your present. They assumed your softness would always be accessible. They were not prepared for what happens when softness becomes guarded by self-respect instead of hope. They keep checking for emotional reactions like someone tapping glass to see if it's real. Your stillness confirms it is, and that confirmation scares them. They feel like they lost a version of you they believed they owned. They hadn't realized it was always borrowed. They struggle with the idea that your power now comes without noise, loud strength they could challenge. Quiet strength leaves them nowhere to strike. They expected your confidence to need witnesses. But yours doesn't perform, it doesn't persuade, it doesn't recruit. It simply moves as if doubt no longer has citizenship in your decisions. They try to understand when control slipped from their hands. The truth unsettles them most. Control didn't slip, it was returned permanently. They speak about you with confusion now, not authority. The tone has shifted from "I know them" to "I don't recognize them." And that loss of certainty breaks something in their pride. They once believed they shaped you. What shakes them now is realizing pressure shaped you into someone they can't reach. They expected your growth to still seek their validation. What confuses them is how effortlessly you stopped seeking anything from them at all. They feel outpaced not because you rushed ahead, but because you no longer slowed down to keep them comfortable. They tell themselves you're just playing a role. They need that belief to survive the idea that this version of you is permanent. They were ready for your success. They were not ready for your independence. They were ready for your healing. They were not ready for your boundaries. They were ready for your confidence. They were not ready for your non-negotiables. They built their comfort on the assumption that you would always be reachable. What's breaking their mind now is realizing you didn't become unreachable out of spite. You became unreachable out of alignment. And here is the ending they will wrestle with in silence. You didn't change to intimidate them. You didn't grow to prove anything. You didn't evolve to make a statement. They're shocked. That's the part that keeps them awake at night. Not angry, not confused, shocked. Because in their mind, history was a safety net. History was insurance. History was proof that no matter what they did, you'd hesitate, you'd pause, you'd remember, you'd soften. They built their confidence on the length of time they had access to you, not realizing that time only matters when respect survives it. They believed history guaranteed permanence. They believed shared memories were chains strong enough to keep you tied, even when things turned ugly. They thought laughter from the past could excuse disrespect in the present. They thought effort from yesterday could cancel betrayal today. They were wrong. And that realization hit them all at once like a door slammed shut in a quiet room. What shocks them isn't that you left. It's how you left. No build-up. No speeches. No dramatic final fight. Just a clean cut, a blink, a moment where they still thought they had time and suddenly they didn't. They replay it over and over, searching for warning signs. There were none they wanted to see. You didn't threaten to leave. You didn't beg for change. You didn't weaponize the past. You observed, you measured, you decided, and when the decision was made, you didn't drag it out for comfort. That's what unsettles them. People expect exits to be loud, messy, emotional. They expect tears, explanations, breakdowns. Those things reassure them that they mattered, that the bond was real, that the separation hurts you too. Your exit gave them none of that. It was efficient, controlled, final. They ask themselves how someone could walk away from so much history so fast. They don't understand that you didn't walk away from the history, you walked away from the pattern. History wasn't erased, it was evaluated. And when it no longer justified the present, it lost its power. They thought shared struggle created immunity. They thought loyalty once given was permanent. They mistook endurance for obligation. You showed them something they never learned. Staying too long can be more damaging than leaving quickly. The truth is, you didn't cut them off in a blink. You cut them off after 1,000 quiet realizations they never noticed. After moments where you chose peace over confrontation. After times you stayed silent instead of explaining. After watching the same behaviors repeat while promises changed shape but never substance. The blink they saw was just the moment the door closed. They never saw the slow walk toward it. They're shocked because they assumed familiarity gave them unlimited access. They assumed knowing your past meant they could predict your future. They assumed your capacity to forgive meant you lacked the capacity to leave. They were wrong on all counts. History made them comfortable, too comfortable. Comfortable enough to stop trying, comfortable enough to test boundaries, comfortable enough to believe you'd always choose the relationship over yourself. When you didn't, their entire framework collapsed. They feel betrayed by your decisiveness. That's the irony. They frame your self-respect as cruelty because it disrupts the version of events where they were always safe from consequences. They say, after everything we've been through, as if survival together grants permission to cause harm later. What they don't say but feel deeply is fear. Fear that if history wasn't enough to keep you, then nothing is guaranteed. Fear that relationships aren't secured by time but by behavior. Fear that access is conditional, not owed. They thought they knew you. They knew the patient you, the forgiving you, the version that stayed and explained and hoped. They didn't know the you who could detach cleanly once clarity arrived. That version scares them because it means you were always capable of leaving, you just chose not to before. Your cut wasn't emotional. It was administrative, like closing a file that no longer serves its purpose. That's what makes it sting. If you had left in rage, they could dismiss it as impulsive. If you had left in tears, they could believe you'd come back. You left in certainty. Certainty doesn't reverse itself. They try to remind you of memories, inside jokes, milestones. They don't realize those things aren't leverage anymore. Memories don't override disrespect. Nostalgia doesn't fix broken dynamics. The past doesn't get to bully the present. They're shocked because you didn't negotiate your exit. You didn't ask for reassurance. You didn't ask for closure. You decided closure was leaving. That level of self-trust feels cold to people who rely on emotional bargaining. They accuse you of being heartless. What they really mean is unreachable. They accuse you of being sudden. What they really mean is resolved. They accuse you of forgetting everything. What they really mean is you remembered yourself. They never expected you to choose self-respect over shared history. That choice rewrote the meaning of everything you went through together. It told them the bond wasn't unconditional, it was mutual. And once mutuality died, so did access. They're shocked because you didn't punish them. You didn't argue your case. You didn't try to make them understand. You simply removed yourself. Removal is the quietest consequence and the most permanent. They thought time invested meant sunk cost. They didn't realize time invested is also time learned. You learned what patterns look like. You learned what doesn't change. You learned how much of yourself you were giving away to keep things alive. And when learning outweighs attachment, leaving becomes simple. They keep asking how you could switch so fast. You didn't switch. You stopped pretending. Pretending takes energy. Clarity doesn't. What shocks them most is that you didn't hesitate publicly. You didn't ask others for validation. You didn't announce your departure. You moved privately, confidently, without seeking permission. That level of independence feels like betrayal to people who expected emotional dependence. They assumed you needed them as much as they needed you. That illusion died the moment you left without collapsing. Seeing you stable without them forced them to confront an uncomfortable truth. The relationship meant more to them as control than to you as survival. They feel erased, not because you forgot them, but because you removed them from your future. Being absent from someone's future hurts more than being criticized in their present. It means the story continues and they're not in it. They tell themselves you're cold now, that you're ruthless, that you're changed. These stories protect their ego from the reality that you simply stopped accepting what you once tolerated. Growth always looks like cruelty to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. They thought history was a leash. You proved it was a lesson. They're shocked because you didn't look back. No lingering messages, no checking in, no emotional breadcrumbs. You left them with silence. And silence doesn't negotiate. Silence doesn't explain. Silence doesn't comfort. Silence just confirms that the decision is final. They didn't expect you to value your future more than your past. Most people cling to what they've already built, even if it's broken. You chose what you could still build. That choice takes courage, and clarity scares people who live on habit. They keep replaying the blink. The moment they realized they no longer had access. 1 second they were familiar. The next, they were outsiders. That sudden shift forces reflection they've been avoiding for years. They ask themselves if you ever cared. The answer scares them, yes, deeply, and you still left. That means caring isn't enough when respect is gone. That means love doesn't override self-worth. That means they can't rely on emotional history to protect them from consequences anymore. They're shocked because your departure wasn't fueled by hatred. Hatred would have tied you to them longer. You left because you were done. Being done is quieter and far more unsettling. They never thought you'd be the one to end it so cleanly. They assumed you'd stay loyal to the memory of who they used to be. You chose to respond to who they became. That choice dismantled every excuse they leaned on. They tell themselves they deserved more warning. They ignore the warnings you gave through changed behavior, reduced effort, emotional distance. Warnings don't always come as ultimatums. Sometimes they come as silence. Sometimes they come as withdrawal. Sometimes they come as you watching instead of reacting. They missed all of them. Now they're left with shock, because shock is what happens when people realize too late that access is a privilege, not a right. You didn't erase the history. You honored it by refusing to let it justify your suffering. You understood that the past should inform decisions, not imprison them. And once you saw that clearly, leaving didn't require drama, it required honesty. They'll tell the story differently. They'll say you changed overnight. They'll say you were cold. They'll say the cut was sudden. Let them. Stories help people sleep when truth keeps them awake. You know what really happened. You reached a point where staying required betraying yourself, and you chose yourself without hesitation. That's why they're shocked, because they expected history to own you, and instead, you proved that history doesn't control the future. Clarity does. They're running now. That's the funny part. Not laughing funny truth is ugly funny. The kind of funny that crawls under your skin and makes you smile when you shouldn't. Your haters, the loud ones, the sneaky ones, the ones who lived off your reactions like parasites live off blood, they're backing away slowly, hands up, eyes wide, whispering the same excuse to each other. You're too dangerous now. Dangerous. Not because you scream, not because you threaten, not because you fight, but because you don't need them anymore. Once upon a time, they loved you predictable. They loved you emotional. They loved you explainable. They loved knowing which button to press to get which reaction. They thrived on your effort, your justifications, your need to be understood. That was the playground where they felt brave. That was where they talked the most. And now, the playground is empty, and they're standing at the edge, wondering when you stopped needing the game. They call you dangerous because you broke the unspoken contract. The contract said you'd always respond, always react, always care enough to defend yourself, always stay in the noise long enough for them to feel important. You didn't sign that contract consciously, but the moment you tore it up, they felt it like a punch to the throat. See, haters don't fear strength. They fear clarity. Strength can be challenged. Clarity can't be argued with. You don't debate anymore. You don't correct narratives. You don't chase misunderstandings. You let people believe whatever keeps them comfortable, and that terrifies them. Because comfort built on lies collapses fast when truth stops cooperating. They say you're dangerous because you don't flinch when they try to provoke you. They throw old insults, recycled stories, exaggerated versions of you like broken records, hoping something sticks. Nothing does. And silence? Silence drives insecure people insane. You used to absorb hits like it was your job. You thought being strong meant enduring. You thought maturity meant explaining. You thought growth meant staying polite even when disrespected. That version of you was useful to everyone except you. Now you've learned something that makes people nervous. You don't need to prove who you are to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's when the word dangerous entered their vocabulary. They used to laugh at you. Now they whisper. They used to confront you. Now they avoid eye contact. They used to mock your calm. Now they're unsettled by it. Because calm that doesn't come from fear but from self-trust feels like standing next to a loaded weapon that doesn't announce itself. You're not loud anymore. You're certain. You're not reactive anymore. You're selective. You're not trying to win. You're done competing. And when someone stops competing, the people who built their identity on rivalry start panicking. Your haters are running because they can't get a read on you. They don't know what you'll tolerate. They don't know where your line is. They don't know what matters to you anymore. Mystery scares people who survive by predictability. They keep saying you changed, like it's an accusation, like growth is a crime, like self-respect is betrayal. What they really mean is, you stopped making it easy for us. You became dangerous the moment you realized your attention was currency and stopped handing it out for free. They try to paint you as cold, arrogant, detached. They need labels because labels make fear manageable. But deep down, they know the truth. You're not cold. You're contained. You're not arrogant. You're unavailable. You're not detached. You're finished. Finished arguing with people who don't listen. Finished explaining to people who twist words. Finished shrinking so others feel tall. Your haters are running because you're no longer feeding the version of them that felt powerful. They don't get to feel superior when you don't respond. They don't get to feel clever when you don't engage. They don't get to feel victorious when you don't fight back. You didn't defeat them. You outgrew the battlefield. That's the part they don't recover from. They thought being cruel made them strong. They thought manipulation was intelligence. They thought control meant dominance. And then you walked away without rage, without revenge, without spectacle, and showed them how empty their tactics really were. Now they're left with nothing but each other. And that's a lonely place to be when all you know how to do is tear people down. They say you're dangerous because you're no longer accessible. Access was their leverage. Access was how they gathered information, tested limits, planted doubt. You closed the door without slamming it, and that quiet closure echoes louder than any argument ever did. You don't announce boundaries anymore. You enforce them by absence. That's advanced. That's grown. That's terrifying to people who rely on chaos. They used to poke you to see how much you'd take. Now they're afraid to poke at all, because they've seen what happens when you stop caring, and it wasn't explosive. It was final. Final scares people more than anger ever could. Anger can be calmed. Anger can be manipulated. Anger still cares. Indifference? Indifference doesn't negotiate. Your haters are running because you don't give them stories anymore. No emotional breakdowns. No public reactions. No messy explanations. You deny them content. And people who live for drama can't survive without an audience. They're calling you dangerous because they feel exposed. When you stopped reacting, they lost their camouflage. Their behavior looks ugly without your emotional responses to distract from it. Their words sound hollow without your engagement to give them weight. You didn't change the rules. You stopped playing. They don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't need validation, approval, or revenge. They don't understand peace that isn't performative. They don't recognize power that doesn't announce itself. So they do the only thing insecure people do when faced with something they can't control. They run. They whisper. They warn others about you. Careful, they say. They're different now. And they're right. You are different, not because you became ruthless, but because you became rooted. Rooted in self-trust. Rooted in discernment. Rooted in knowing who deserves access and who doesn't. You don't hate your haters. Hate would require energy you no longer waste. You don't even want revenge. Revenge would mean they still matter. What you want and what you chose is distance. Distance is lethal to people who survive on proximity. They're running because they can't manipulate someone who sees patterns instead of excuses. They can't gaslight someone who trusts their memory. They can't intimidate someone who's already walked through worse alone. They used to call you weak because you were kind. Now they call you dangerous because you're kind to yourself first. That switch rewires everything. They can't bait you with insults. They can't guilt you with history. They can't scare you with threats of exclusion. You've already excluded yourself from nonsense. Your haters are running because you've become ungovernable. Not rebellious, not chaotic. Ungovernable. You don't respond to pressure, you don't bend under noise, you don't rush to explain. You let silence do the talking. Silence reveals who needs control. Silence exposes who needs reaction. Silence shows who never had substance to begin with. They're running because they know you see them clearly now. And being seen by someone who doesn't fear you is unbearable for people built on illusions. They used to think they were above you. Now they're not sure where they stand, and uncertainty humbles even the loudest mouths. You intimidate them because you're not impressed. You intimidate them because you don't chase. You intimidate them because you're not available for their version of reality. And the funniest part, the darkest joke of all, is that you didn't have to do anything extreme to become this person. You just stopped betraying yourself. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped tolerating disrespect. You stopped confusing endurance with strength. And suddenly the same people who mocked your softness are warning others about your presence. Careful, they say again. They're not the same. No, you're not. You're calmer, sharper, quieter, more selective. And that combination is lethal to egos built on chaos. Your haters are running because they can't reach you emotionally anymore. They can't provoke guilt. They can't trigger doubt. They can't lure you back into old dynamics. You've become the one thing they can't defeat. Someone who doesn't need to win. They'll keep talking. They'll keep exaggerating. They'll keep framing your boundaries as hostility. Let them. Stories are all they have left. You're too busy living. They say you're dangerous because danger is what power looks like to people who've never had any of their own. And here's the truth they'll never admit, even to themselves. You didn't become dangerous to them. You became immune. Immune to manipulation. Immune to projection. Immune to disrespect dressed up as humor. Immune to chaos disguised as connection. That immunity feels like death to people who fed on your reactions. So they run. Let them. Because the moment people who tried to break you start fearing you, you know one thing for certain. You didn't lose yourself. You found yourself. And that, to the wrong people, is the most dangerous thing you could ever do. They hate you because you never showed up to play by their rules. While they were setting traps, rehearsing lines, sharpening intentions, you were already walking away with the outcome secured. You didn't outfight them. You outgrew the battlefield. They were prepared for resistance, not removal. They expected reactions, not absence. And that's what crushed them. You didn't clash with their plans. You made their plans irrelevant. They hate you because you won without engaging. No arguments, no public breakdown, no emotional leaks, just a quiet shift where suddenly their moves had no opponent. You defeated them the moment you stopped needing validation. Games only work when both sides want something from each other. You wanted nothing, and that ended everything. They were still counting points while you closed the scoreboard. They hate you because you didn't underestimate them, you simply didn't fear them. You saw the patterns early, the predictable plays, the recycled manipulation dressed up as strategy. You didn't interrupt them. You let them reveal themselves fully, comfortably, confidently. And while they thought they were setting the stage, you were already mapping the exit. They hate you because you didn't rush. You observed, you listened, you let time expose what effort never could. By the time they were ready to strike, there was nothing left to attack, no access, no leverage, no emotional entry point. They hate you because they prepared for war and found an empty field. You didn't block them out of anger. You outgrew them out of clarity. That distinction matters because anger can be provoked, but clarity cannot. They wanted power over you. You removed yourself from the equation entirely. That's not losing control, that's losing relevance. They hate you because they never got to see you struggle. No panic, no confusion, no begging, just composure. You didn't need to expose them. Their frustration did it for you. Nothing reveals defeat faster than someone screaming at a wall that won't answer back. They hate you because you understood something early: the game only exists if you stay seated at the table. So you stood up. They were still rolling dice when you left the building. They hate you because you didn't try to win their approval. You didn't seek closure from people who caused the damage. You didn't wait for fairness. You decided the outcome yourself. They hate you because you made them feel small without ever trying to. Your calm felt like dominance because it highlighted their chaos. You didn't expose their tactics. You simply refused to respond to them. Silence dismantled what confrontation never could. They hate you because they thought they were clever until they realized you were conscious. They thought they were ahead of you. They didn't know you had already finished the race and stopped running. They hate you because you didn't chase revenge. Revenge would have kept you tied to the same board. You chose freedom instead. They were still plotting your downfall while you were designing your future. They hate you because your absence forced them to face themselves. No distraction, no reactions to feed on, just the echo of their own intentions. You defeated them the moment you stopped explaining yourself. Explanations invite debate. You chose finality. They hate you because you didn't win loudly. You won cleanly. No scars to show off. No trophies to display. Just peace, and that's unbearable to people who survive on conflict. They wanted to see you crack. Instead, they watched you detach with precision. They hate you because they never got the satisfaction of seeing their plan work. All that effort wasted on someone who refused to be affected. You didn't ruin their game. You proved it was never worth playing. They were playing chess. You flipped the board by walking away. They hate you because you never came back to prove anything. No second round, no rematch, no explanation tour. You defeated them before the game even started, because you understood something they never will. The strongest move is refusing to play, a game designed to make you lose. They hate you because they never got confirmation that their strategy mattered. No feedback, no emotional response, no visible damage. It's impossible to feel powerful when the target refuses to register the hit. They built narratives where you were supposed to react on cue. When you didn't, the script collapsed. And nothing enrages manipulators more than an audience that leaves mid-performance. They hate you because you didn't expose their intentions publicly. You let them sit alone with what they planned, forced to face themselves without distraction or applause. You didn't confront them because confrontation would have validated their importance. You denied them that privilege. They hate you because you didn't rush to defend your name. You understood that truth doesn't need urgency, lies do. You didn't correct misconceptions, you let time correct them. Time is ruthless with false confidence. They hate you because you never looked back to check if they noticed your exit. That indifference cut deeper than any insult. They expected resistance to justify escalation. You offered nothing. Escalation without opposition turns inward. They hate you because they were ready to compete, but competition requires two people who care about winning the same prize. You didn't want the prize they offered. You walked away before the rules could be enforced. They hate you because you didn't let fear influence timing. You left exactly when clarity arrived, not when pressure peaked. They thought patience meant weakness. You showed them patience is how patterns reveal themselves. They hate you because you didn't try to look strong. You were strong enough not to perform it. They waited for an emotional reaction to confirm impact. What they got was silence, and silence gives nothing back. They hate you because your life continued smoothly. No visible collapse, no dramatic pause, just momentum. They expected you to lose something by leaving. What you lost was dead weight. They hate you because they couldn't rewrite history once you stopped participating in it. You didn't argue facts. You removed access. Facts matter less when relevance disappears. They hate you because you didn't need closure from them. You created closure by deciding the story was over. They thought you needed the last word. You needed the last step away. They hate you because you didn't stay to prove your worth. You assumed it and moved accordingly. They tried to provoke curiosity. You chose disinterest. They hate you because you didn't underestimate how exhausting games become when no one is playing along. They prepared for emotional warfare. You chose logistical peace. They hate you because they couldn't pull you back with nostalgia. Memory lost its power once reality was clear. They waited for guilt to bring you back. Guilt requires emotional dependency. You dissolved it. They hate you because your silence didn't feel empty, it felt intentional. They tried to re-enter through familiarity. You had already changed the locks internally. They hate you because they lost without understanding how. Confusion lingers longer than defeat. They expected to outmaneuver you. They didn't realize you weren't on the board anymore. They hate you because their energy was spent preparing for someone who had already moved on. You didn't beat them by being louder, smarter, or faster. You beat them by being finished. That's what makes it unbearable. They weren't defeated by force. They were defeated by irrelevance. And that kind of loss doesn't come with recovery. They hate you because even now, long after everything ended, they still replay scenarios where you were supposed to react differently. They imagine arguments that never happened, confrontations that never came, victories they never earned. Your absence robbed them of resolution, and unresolved losses rot from the inside. They keep wondering when you decided they were no longer worth engaging. That question haunts them more than any insult ever could, because it forces them to confront the possibility that the defeat wasn't sudden, it was calculated, quiet, and irreversible. They hate you because you didn't collapse under pressure. Pressure exposes cracks, but all it did was reveal how solid your foundation already was. You didn't harden under stress, you clarified. They expected emotional leakage, a weak moment, a late-night message, something human they could latch onto. What they got instead was consistency. And consistency without attachment feels merciless to people who rely on chaos. They hate you because you didn't circle back once the dust settled. You didn't check if they were okay. You didn't seek mutual understanding. You understood enough the first time. They replay the moment they lost control, trying to pinpoint where the power shifted. They don't realize power didn't shift, it exited. Quietly, permanently. They hate you because you didn't romanticize the struggle. You didn't treat pain like proof of depth. You treated it like information and you acted on it. They expected emotional residue, lingering tension, something to work with. You left nothing behind but clarity, and clarity is sterile. They hate you because your detachment didn't come with bitterness. Bitterness would have kept you accessible. You chose neutrality, and neutrality offers no handle to grab. They still look for signs that the loss affected you. They scan your life for disruption, instability, longing. What they find instead is structure, and that tells them everything they didn't want to know. They started confessing when silence finally scared them, not because conscience arrived early, but because consequences did. The words came out clumsy and late, stacked with explanations that would have mattered once. Confessions sound different when they're spoken into distance. They echo. And echoing truth doesn't heal, it only exposes how far you've already gone. They admitted things they swore you'd never find out. Half-truths, quiet betrayals, calculated moments they thought were invisible. They spoke like honesty could reverse time. They didn't understand that truth after damage isn't repair, it's documentation. And you were no longer collecting evidence. They started confessing because they lost access. Access to your patience, access to your understanding, access to the version of you that made room for unfinished apologies. Now every word arrives too late, landing where your emotions used to be. They thought confession would reopen dialogue. They didn't realize dialogue ended the moment you detached internally. You don't negotiate with memories. You don't debate with the past. You've already moved into a life that doesn't require their explanations. They finally said what they did because secrecy stopped protecting them. Silence no longer worked once you stopped reacting. When someone no longer fears your response, truth spills out not as courage but as panic. They wanted you to hear them, to acknowledge the honesty, to validate the effort it took to confess. But effort doesn't erase impact, and honesty doesn't earn access when trust is gone. You're not unreachable out of cruelty, you're unreachable by design. They confessed hoping guilt would soften you. They didn't know guilt can't reach someone who already made peace. You processed the damage long before they processed accountability. Timing is everything, and theirs failed them. They tried to explain motives, circumstances, pressure, confusion, as if context could dilute consequence. You don't interrupt. You don't correct them. You simply don't engage. Detachment doesn't argue, it closes. They started confessing because they needed relief. Confession was never about you. It was about unloading what they could no longer carry alone. But you are not their absolution anymore. They wanted forgiveness. Forgiveness requires presence. You're absent emotionally, mentally, energetically, not in anger, in completion. And completion doesn't circle back. They finally spoke the truth when it stopped benefiting them to lie. That's the part they don't want to admit. Confession after loss is not bravery, it's damage control. They keep talking, hoping one sentence might land differently, hoping one detail will reopen the door. They don't see that the door isn't locked, the building is gone. You don't feel satisfaction hearing the truth now. You feel distance, neutrality, a quiet confirmation that leaving was right. Their honesty didn't hurt you. It freed you from wondering. They are confessing to someone you no longer are. The version of you that would have listened carefully, empathized deeply, and stayed longer than necessary doesn't exist anymore. You didn't cut them off to punish them. You cut access to protect what you rebuilt. And what you rebuilt doesn't require revisiting ruins. They confess. You don't respond. Not because you didn't hear, but because you're finally out of reach. And some truths arrive only to prove why they should have been spoken before you learned how to leave. They keep confessing because now they have time to think. Too much time. Time that used to be filled by your presence, your patience, your willingness to absorb unfinished truths. With you gone, their thoughts have nowhere to hide. They confess because the mask is useless now. There's no one left to perform for, no image left to protect. When the audience leaves, honesty becomes unavoidable. They thought admitting everything would bring relief. What it brought instead was the realization that relief doesn't come when the person who mattered is no longer listening. They say things they once denied fiercely. Not because they suddenly became honest, but because denial lost its purpose when you stopped asking questions. They want acknowledgement more than forgiveness, a sign that the truth landed somewhere meaningful, but it lands in silence, and silence doesn't clap. They confess because they're afraid their story will end unfinished. People hate unfinished stories. You closed yours without their input, and that terrifies them. They hope the truth would humanize them again in your eyes. They don't realize detachment doesn't dehumanize, it simply decenters. They finally name the damage out loud because pretending it didn't exist stopped working. Reality doesn't require agreement to be real. They talk about regret like it's currency, like enough remorse can buy back relevance. But relevance doesn't return once trust leaves. They confess because they can feel how final your absence is. Confession is their last attempt to feel close to the ending. They try to explain themselves in detail, hoping complexity will soften the outcome. You already simplified the truth, it wasn't safe to stay. They confess because guilt is loud when there's no distraction, and you were their biggest distraction from accountability. They want you to understand them. You already do. Understanding is why you left. They say, "I should have told you earlier," without realizing that sentence itself answers everything. They confess because the version of you that left set a standard they can't escape. Honesty arrived too late to meet it. They keep talking, hoping repetition will create impact. But impact doesn't increase after departure, it fades. They wanted confession to be a bridge. You turned it into proof the bridge was already burned. They don't realize confession is a form of control when timed late and attempt to rewrite the emotional ending. You refuse to participate, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. They confess because they're still trying to reach you, and you stay silent because some access, once lost, is not meant to be recovered. They confess because now they're alone with the truth. When you were present, denial had somewhere to hide. With you gone, the truth sits in the room with them, unmoving, unforgiving. They say things out loud now that they rehearsed silently before. Back then, fear kept them quiet. Now loss gives them courage, the kind that arrives after it no longer matters. They confess, hoping honesty will shorten the distance. They don't understand distance created by clarity doesn't shrink, it stabilizes. They speak as if the truth is a key. But some doors don't unlock once the building has been abandoned. They confess because silence from you feels heavier than confrontation ever did. At least anger would have meant presence. Your absence confirms finality. They list their mistakes one by one, hoping accountability will look like effort. You recognize it for what it is, recognition without restoration. They confess because guilt demands an audience. Without one, it turns inward and becomes unbearable. They want your acknowledgement because acknowledgement would mean they still matter in your emotional landscape. They don't. They confess because they're trying to rewrite the ending. But endings written alone don't change the plot. They talk about growth, awareness, lessons learned. You know growth that arrives after loss is real, but it's no longer relevant to you. They confess because they need relief more than reconciliation. Relief is personal. Reconciliation requires consent. They want you to hear how hard it is for them now. You already know. Difficulty doesn't reverse decisions. They confess, hoping empathy will reopen communication. Empathy didn't disappear, it just relocated to self-preservation. They talk as if honesty should be rewarded. You understand honesty is the minimum, not a currency. They confess because they finally see the weight of what they did. You saw it while it was happening. That's why you left early. They speak into the void, mistaking silence for ignorance. Silence is a choice. They confess because your detachment feels permanent, and permanence scares people who waited too long. They want to be forgiven so they can stop feeling this way. Forgiveness doesn't exist to ease someone else's guilt. They confess because they can't undo the past, only narrate it. Narration doesn't heal the damage already done, and the truth settles in slowly for them. They can confess forever, but some distances are created not by anger, but by understanding something so completely that there's nothing left to say. They confess because they're haunted by how calmly you left. No explosion, no collapse, just a quiet withdrawal that told them you were already done long before they caught up emotionally. They say they wish they could go back to the moment before everything broke. You know the truth, it was breaking long before that moment. You simply stopped pretending it wasn't. They confess because they want to feel seen again. But being seen requires presence, and you no longer stand where they're looking. They keep explaining intentions, as if intention ever outweighed impact. You learn the hard way that good intentions don't protect you from bad outcomes. They confess because your detachment removed the illusion that things were mutual. Now they feel exposed alone with their choices. They want you to acknowledge their honesty, because acknowledgement would soften the reality that honesty arrived as an afterthought. They didn't notice it last holiday season because comfort makes people careless. You were present, consistent, available, so they assumed you always would be. That assumption is what cost them everything. Last season you were there filling the silence, smoothing tensions, making things lighter without being asked. They accepted it like background noise, never realizing how much of the warmth came from you. They remember how busy they were with distractions, thinking you'd wait, thinking you'd understand, thinking you'd stay patient while they prioritized everything else. They didn't think twice about postponing you. Holidays came and went, and you were treated like something that would still be there when convenient. You watched them choose comfort over care, excuses over effort, habit over presence, and you said nothing because you were already taking notes. They mistook your quiet endurance for loyalty without limits. They didn't know loyalty has a breaking point when appreciation never shows up. Now the season comes back around, and you're gone, and suddenly the absence is loud, too loud to ignore. The places you once occupied feel colder, conversations feel shorter, laughter feels forced, and they don't know why everything feels off. They remember moments where you were brushed aside, half listened to, taken lightly. Those memories replay differently now. They thought holidays were about routine. They didn't realize they were about people, and you were a big part of what made it feel like something. Last season, they assumed you'd always be there next year. That assumption now sits heavy in their chest. They scroll through memories and feel a strange discomfort. Not nostalgia, regret. Regret hits differently when there's no way to fix it. You were there when it mattered, even when they weren't. And now that imbalance has finally caught up to them. They remember how easily they canceled plans with you, how casually they postponed connection, how confidently they believed you'd wait. Now they wait and nothing happens. They realize too late that you didn't leave suddenly. You left after being invisible for too long. Holiday lights come on again, but something feels missing. The energy is wrong. The joy feels incomplete. They try to recreate the vibe with other people. It doesn't work. Substitutes never replace presence. They remember your effort now. Funny how effort becomes obvious only when it disappears. Last season, they thought your kindness was guaranteed. This season, they understand kindness is a choice, and you chose yourself. They sit with the realization that they never said thank you in a way that mattered. Now there's no one to say it to. They didn't lose you in a fight. They lost you in neglect. And neglect leaves no dramatic moment to blame. They remember how you showed up even when you were tired, even when you weren't prioritized, even when it wasn't returned. Now the silence shows up instead. They feel it most during quiet moments, when celebrations slow down, when distractions fade, when reality settles in. They wonder when you decided to leave. They don't know it happened long before you actually did. They assumed you'd tolerate being taken for granted forever. You proved them wrong without making a scene. This season reminds them of their carelessness. Every familiar moment now carries an unfamiliar emptiness. They miss you, not loudly but constantly. They realize too late that presence is priceless, and they treated it like it was replaceable. They feel foolish for not noticing your distance growing last time. You were already halfway gone. They try to rationalize it, timing, stress, life. But deep down they know the truth. They had you when it mattered, and they didn't value it. Now you're not here anymore, and the season feels different, quieter, colder, incomplete, because you didn't just leave their life. You left a space they never thought would be empty. They didn't realize how much of the atmosphere you carried until the atmosphere changed. What once felt effortless now feels heavy, like something essential slipped away without warning. They catch themselves expecting you to be there out of habit, in small moments, in familiar routines. And every time that expectation collapses, it stings again. Last holiday season, they were distracted by noise, by comfort, by certainty. They thought certainty meant permanence. They were wrong. You were the one who remembered details, held space, showed patience when others rushed through moments. They assumed that role was automatic. It wasn't. Now the same moments arrive, and no one fills them the way you did. Not because others aren't trying, but because presence can't be replicated. They feel it when traditions feel hollow, when laughter comes late, when joy feels scheduled instead of natural. They remember how you waited, how you adjusted, how you showed up even when it wasn't returned with the same care. They assumed you understood everything. They never considered that understanding without appreciation becomes exhaustion. Now they understand, but understanding arrived after access was gone. They replay conversations from last season and realize how absent they were while you were fully present. They thought postponing you had no cost. They didn't know the cost would be permanent absence. They feel uneasy when familiar dates approach. Not because they miss the past, but because the present exposes what they lost. They wonder when you stop trying. They don't know it happened quietly, long before the goodbye. They remember how steady you were, how reliable, how easy it was to lean on you without asking how you were holding up. Now there's no one to lean on in the same way, and that realization is unsettling. They try to tell themselves you'd come back if they reached out. But deep down, they know you moved on with intention. They miss the version of themselves that existed when you were around, calmer, warmer, more grounded. They realize too late that gratitude isn't something you save for later. Later doesn't always arrive. They notice the absence in places they never expected, in pauses, in transitions, in moments that used to feel safe. They feel foolish for thinking consistency meant inevitability. Consistency was a gift, not a guarantee. They understand now that being taken for granted doesn't end loudly. It ends quietly with distance replacing effort. They feel the weight of seasons repeating without you. Each repetition makes the absence more real. They wish they had paid attention when it mattered, when presence was still available. They see now that you didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because caring alone wasn't enough. They miss you in ways they can't articulate without admitting fault. And that admission doesn't come easily. They notice it in the smallest things now, in pauses where your voice used to soften the room, in moments that feel slightly off, like a song missing its harmony. They didn't expect your absence to be this persistent. They thought missing you would fade after a while. Instead, it settled in and made itself permanent. They remember how effortless it felt to have you around. That ease made them careless. They mistook comfort for something that didn't need tending. Now effort feels heavier. Conversations feel forced, and nothing flows the way it used to. They realize how much emotional labor you carried without announcing it, how many moments you stabilized quietly while others enjoyed the surface. Last season they thought you were simply there. This season, they understand you were holding everything together. They feel it when traditions don't land the same, when smiles take longer to arrive, when warmth feels manufactured instead of natural. They try to distract themselves with new faces and louder plans, but distraction doesn't replace depth. They remember how you noticed when something was off, how you checked in without being asked. That kind of presence isn't common. Now no one notices in the same way, and that absence feels personal. They realize too late that appreciation isn't implied, it's expressed. And silence where gratitude should have been becomes regret. They think about moments they could have shown up better, paid attention more, chosen you instead of convenience. Those thoughts arrive uninvited now. They feel unsettled knowing you didn't leave angrily. You left calmly. Calm exits don't reopen. They wish they had understood sooner that you weren't asking for much, just acknowledgement. They see now that being taken for granted doesn't mean being unnoticed. It means being relied on without being valued. They thought you'd wait because you always had. They didn't realize waiting has an expiration date. Now they're the ones waiting. waiting for a version of the season that doesn't exist anymore. They notice how your absence changed them, how things feel less grounded, less certain. They didn't lose you in conflict, they lost you in comfort. And comfort is dangerous when it makes people forget to care. They finally understand that presence is a privilege, one they misused. And every time the season repeats without you, that lesson repeats too. Quietly, consistently, and without mercy. They want you back because they recognize the silence now, not the peaceful kind, the kind that follows a loss they didn't think was possible. Only now do they realize how much space you used to fill. They want you back because life feels harder without your patience cushioning their mistakes. You made things easier by absorbing what wasn't yours to carry. They want you back because convenience disguised itself as love, and they confused your availability with permanence. They didn't notice when you started pulling inward. They were too busy assuming you'd stay the same while they stayed careless. They want you back because the version of you they had was forgiving, flexible, endlessly understanding. That version no longer exists. You didn't wake up one day and become cold. You arrived here after countless moments of being unheard, unchosen, and undervalued. They want you back because now they feel the consequences you used to quietly manage for them. But you already stepped into your villain era, the era where self-respect outweighs nostalgia. This version of you doesn't argue for space. It takes it. They reach out hoping to trigger the old you, the one who explained, softened, waited. But that door is locked from the inside. They want you back because they finally see your worth. The problem is, you saw it first. Your villain era isn't loud. It's composed, strategic, emotionally disciplined. You no longer react, you decide. They want you back because their world feels unstable without your grounding presence. But your world finally feels stable without them. They try to appeal to memories, inside jokes, shared history. You understand now that history doesn't justify disrespect. Your villain era is choosing peace over people who thrived in your chaos. They want you back because replacement didn't work. Substitutes never match depth. You stopped explaining yourself because clarity made explanations unnecessary. They call you cold. You call it healed. They want you back because they miss the access, not the responsibility. Your villain era is knowing the difference. You don't hate them. Hate still ties you emotionally, you simply outgrew them. They want you back because you were consistent, reliable, safe. But safety without appreciation becomes suffocating. Your villain era is choosing yourself without guilt. They keep waiting for you to soften. They don't understand this isn't hardness, it's boundaries solidified. You don't revisit places that taught you how to survive. They want you back because now they feel small without you. You don't return to make others feel whole. Your villain era is realizing love doesn't require self-abandonment. They try apologies, nostalgia, promises. You measure change, not words. You already mourned the relationship while you were still in it. They want you back because regret arrived late. You stepped into your villain era because staying would have cost you yourself. This version of you doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't wait. They want you back, but you're already gone, already aligned, already choosing power over familiarity, and peace over people who only wanted you. Once you stopped being available, they want you back because absence finally taught them what presence used to hide. When you were there, everything felt manageable. Now everything feels exposed. They want you back because life stopped bending in their favor the moment you stopped compensating for their flaws. They didn't notice how much emotional labor you carried until no one was left to carry it. They want you back because things fall apart faster without your patience holding them together. They thought your loyalty was automatic. They didn't realize loyalty is a decision renewed daily. They want you back because no one replaces consistency once it's gone. They assumed you'd always be reachable, always understanding, always forgiving. That assumption killed the connection. They want you back because their mistakes echo louder without you softening the impact. They finally see the value of what you gave freely, and now it costs too much to get it back. They want you back because comfort vanished when you did. You stepped into your villain era the moment you stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This version of you doesn't negotiate respect. It expects it or exits. They want you back because boundaries revealed how much they relied on your lack of them. They reach out hoping to find the old you waiting patiently. But patience has limits, and you reached yours. They want you back because your absence disrupted their sense of control. You stepped into your villain era when you realized control disguised itself as care. They miss how you stayed even when it hurt. They don't miss how much it cost you. They want you back because now they have to deal with consequences directly. This version of you doesn't rescue people from outcomes they earned. They keep replaying moments, searching for the point of no return. They don't realize it was a process, not a moment. They want you back because you were predictable in a way that felt safe. You became unpredictable the moment you chose yourself. They expected your kindness to outlive their neglect. It didn't. They want you back because no one else tolerates what you once normalized. Your villain era is unlearning tolerance for disrespect. They miss the version of you that made excuses for them. That version died quietly. They want you back because accountability feels heavier without your forgiveness cushioning it. You stopped cushioning impact to protect your own spine. They want you back because you were stable while they were inconsistent. Your villain era is matching energy and walking away when it doesn't align. They keep hoping time will soften you. Time hardened your resolve. They want you back because distance made your value undeniable. You stepped into your villain era when you stopped shrinking to keep others comfortable. They miss how accessible you were. This version of you is selective. They want you back because the silence where you used to be feels judgmental even though it's not. You don't judge. You choose. They want you back because they never expected finality. You chose finality because anything less would reopen wounds. They keep testing the door, hoping it's unlocked. You changed the locks internally long ago. They want you back because regret finally showed up late and useless. You stepped into your villain era because staying would have meant betraying yourself again. They miss your softness. You kept your softness, you just stopped handing it to people who broke it. They want you back because now they see the difference between love and access. You already saw it. They hope for a return. You chose evolution. They want you back because the world feels less forgiving without you buffering their mistakes. You used to absorb consequences quietly. Now consequences arrive unfiltered. They didn't realize how much stability you brought until instability became their daily experience. Your absence didn't create chaos, it revealed it. They want you back because you were the calm they leaned on without learning how to be calm themselves. You stepped into your villain era when you stopped being emotional insurance for people who refused to grow. They miss how you made things easier. They don't miss how hard it was for you. They want you back because now they have to face themselves. And that mirror isn't kind. This version of you doesn't soften reality for others. It accepts reality and adapts. They want you back because they finally understand effort has weight, and yours is gone. They thought you were strong enough to handle anything. They didn't realize strength also knows when to walk away. They miss your emotional generosity. You learn generosity without boundaries is self-destruction. They want you back because your silence feels louder than your presence ever was. You stepped into your villain era when silence became more peaceful than explanation. They keep wondering how you detached so cleanly. They don't know detachment started while you were still smiling. They want you back because the version of you they lost made their lives easier to live. This version of you makes your own life easier instead. They miss how you forgave quickly. You learned quick forgiveness teaches slow change. They want you back because accountability feels heavier without your understanding cushioning it. You stopped cushioning impact when you realized your spine was bending. They want you back because nobody else stays the way you stayed. You stopped staying where you weren't valued. They miss your consistency. You realize consistency without reciprocity is exploitation. They want you back because your absence rewrote the power dynamic. Your villain era is refusing to be predictable for people who misuse predictability. They hoped distance would weaken you. Distance clarified everything. They want you back because replacement revealed what was irreplaceable. You stepped into your villain era when you stopped competing for basic respect. They miss how you made excuses for them. You stopped lying to yourself first. They want you back because the comfort they felt around you was real. But comfort that costs self-respect is too expensive. They don't recognize you anymore. That's because they only knew the version that tolerated less.